right. We have a number of people who worked on the film. Please welcome, first of all, writer Tony McNamara. We also have the sound designer, Johnnie Burn. And we have the film's composer, Jerskin Fendrix. We have our costume designer, Holly Waddington. And we have two production designers with us, James Price. And Shona Heath. And of course, we have the director, Yorgos Lanthimos. Thank you all for being here. I think they like the film.
Thank you.
I'm really glad that you're here, Tony, because I know a few days ago that would not have been possible. So
yes, I'm very glad to be here.
And I guess since this is your first Q&A, as you told me for this film, I thought maybe we'll start with the script and the book, and maybe Yorgos and Tony, you can talk a little bit about Alasdair Gray's novel. He passed away a few years ago, but this film has been in the works for a while, and you actually were able to meet with him before he died.
Yeah, I met him around 2011, I think. I read the book like a year before or so, and I was very excited to find out that it hadn't been adapted into a film, which surprised me. And I sought out to meet him, and I went to Glasgow to his house, met him. He was a wonderful, very energetic, around 80 years old. As soon as I met him, he just took me out walking to Glasgow. I had to try and keep up with him. He was just showing me around, very excited, and by the end we just went back to his house and said okay, I've seen your film Dogtooth. I think you're a very talented young man. You're welcome to make my film, my novel into a film. Okay, bye. And then he just, left. Yeah, and it just took a while to put it together. I think people weren't so eager at that time for me to make a film of.
This was right after Dogtooth, or
it was right after. I think I had just made Alps. I don't know if it was seen or at the time. So I hadn't made an English language film. Certainly nothing of this scale. So I think one reason was that. The other reason was, I guess this story wasn't as interesting 12 years ago or something.
Why would you?
I don't know.
If you were to guess.
I wanted to make it. I think we live in different times, and a story of a woman that goes into the world in her own terms, and this journey I guess didn't feel that interesting. Maybe the premise was quite strange too. It wasn't last year though, so I don't know.
You said you were surprised it hadn't been made into a film. What was it about the book that seemed especially cinematic to you?
I mean, it's a really special novel. I was certainly completely captivated by the character Bella Baxter. I was like, imagine bringing that person to life. It would be incredible. But the tone of the novel, the story, the premise, the world that it created, the other characters, the themes, it was just incredible, I thought.
Yeah. Tony, maybe we can bring you in and you can talk a little bit of the process of adapting it and certain things that you maybe needed to change or what was important for you to actually preserve from the book.
Yeah, I think when Yorgos I think I'd done a couple of drafts of The Favourite, and Yorgos said, I've got this other thing that no one wants to do. But maybe you want to do it. And then I read it, and it is an amazing book. And then it was, I think the biggest thing was how to adapt it, because it's quite a massive book. It's quite extraordinary and has all this kind of stuff about Scottish nationalism. It's about a lot of things. And it's by character and Bella's last. And I think the biggest thing we decided was, because in the book, it's sort of, her story is told through the men telling her story. And at the end, she gets to tell it quite briefly. And so the first thing I guess we wanted to do is change that and bring her as the center of the movie and have it, that's who you went on the journey with. That was kind of the biggest thing. And then from there, I remember it being very hard at one point, because it was quite a hard adapt. Like, we talked about it, and then Yorgos sent me a couple of movies to watch that weren't it, but there was sort of stuff in it that he thought was interesting. And then I worked out the shape of it, and then we talked, we did what we do, which is have lunch and then talk about it for a bit. We talked about it for a bit, and then I went away and tried to write it, and I knew it was very hard. And I remember like page 75 going, I don't think I can do this. And I wrote to him, this is a testament to Yorgos as a person to work with, because it's not something you normally do, which literally I wrote, I don't think I can do this. I said, it's so difficult to make this bit work, and I don't know how to get there. And he wrote back very kindly and went, we knew it would be hard. Keep going, I think it'll be worth it. So then I got to the end of the first draft, and first draft worked out pretty good. And from there, we just worked our way over the years to kind of refine it and get it better, yeah.
What were some of the films that Yorgos mentioned? Because I know the way you work, you don't really use literal reference points, but you do throw out a lot of this whole constellation, that the film might exist within.
They were, and they weren't literal. I think one was Belle de Jour, and one was in the ship and the boats out on the Fellini film. Did you think of these as like tonal reference points, or?
I mean, I don't know it's just like this general feeling of.
Yeah, there wasn't to
this
be
vague. That's what.
It wasn't to be taken literally.
It
was very like, I don't know, this is interesting, and in the world of something we're thinking, this is where we think we are.
It's more inspiration. Like, look at what they've done. It's beautiful. Like, and somehow there's a boat. We're gonna build sets. You know, she's in a brothel. She works in a brothel. What's the best movie? It's much free. It's not like, look at this thing, that aspect of it. It's like being inspired by great films that have some kind of, connection and then there were completely different films for other departments, like, so that's why it's so, huge, the horizon of references.
Speaking of building sets, I'm glad we have both the production designers here with us. Shona and James, could you talk a little bit? You had not worked together before this film?
No, we hadn't.
No. Sorry, that was really deep.
I mean, the film is just such an incredible feat of world building. So I'm curious about, where do you even begin with something like this? I mean, also not multiple worlds. What was the division of labor like, I guess, between the two of you?
So I kind of start with grand sort of ideas of the big sets, the big four, which are the London, Lisbon, Paris, and the ship, the kind of small one, and was really excited about building a composite, immersive world. Each one of those sets is like a real place. You could go off the street into the house in London, and in Lisbon. Again, it was like a theme park. We built a theme park that you could totally get lost around. And when Bella's walking around the streets, and you could do that, and crew did. So that's what excited me about it, is starting that kind of grand idea and making immersive environments that Yorgos and Robbie and the cast can wander around. And then Shona comes from a totally different point, which I'll let you talk about, right? Yeah.
Well, I think I we sort of met in the middle. James did big and I did small up. So I started with the details, and I think the details came from the narrative and from the script. The humour, we tried to put humour into the sets. There were doors that were cut in the wrong places. There were floors that were sort of bouncy and really annoying to film on. And there were sort of walls that were padded to stop Bella from hurting herself, like Godwin would have designed this house especially for her. So I think the details of all of those were where I started, and Bella's character herself, that she would need to be surrounded with beauty and also depictions of the outside world to keep her entertained in her ivory tower, I suppose. So there were landscapes on the walls and depictions of human life and flight. There were fishes on her ceiling, which she later travelled to Lisbon on, which was useful. So, yeah, I think that we met very nicely in the middle.
And Yorgos, what was, your collaboration with Shona and James? You said you showed, different films and talked about different things to different departments. What was your brief for production design and building sets?
What was my brief? I think it was, that as soon as I read the book and I imagined it making it into a film, I always thought that we should build the world for Bella, for her, because it just felt that it needed to be her perspective and, have it familiar, but at the same time, strange to us, and just see it from a very unique perspective. So I always thought that this should be, a movie that we shoot, the old-fashioned way in a studio. Even exteriors, we make it, we build them in a studio. And use a lot of, I wanted us to use a lot of old school techniques, but also new technology. But whatever we used and however we combined them, everything would have been first, made by us. Even if it's like an LED screen behind the boat, for example, we've painted the sky and the sea and everything. So it was like combining these old techniques with new technology, or because we're using very wide-angle lenses, for example, despite the fact that the sets were huge, we still had to, fill the top, because we would see the ceiling of the studio. But that was, again, everything was scanned, painted. We used actual, handmade stuff in order to fill the rest of it. So I think that was the general approach. And then we looked at many different things, from films to paintings to photography to...
Curious about the paintings. I noticed all the credits for the museums in the closing credit scroll. So obviously there were some art references.
I think the references from you were, we had a Hieronymus Bosch painting, which actually, when James and I would get sort of slightly lost as to what to do, we just kept on looking at this painting, which Yorgos had sent us, and it was of birds and little people, but the colours in it and the surreality of it, and I suppose thinking out of the box, Bosch painted strange architectural shapes, even in the 16th century, so we were out of era. So I think that was really helpful, having the paintings. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Holly,
just one painting, and they did all that.
So I wanted to bring Holly in as a costume designer. Obviously, the costumes are such a big part of this film. Can you talk a little bit about your reference points, because it's, in some ways they seem to be riffing on period costumes, but they're also contemporary and also even futuristic, you might say. There's just the shapes and materials, and I'm just curious about your process.
Hello. My reference from Yorgos was, I had one reference, and it was a pair of inflatable trousers. And
your pair of inflatable?
And I started off
didn't own them.
Doing a lot of, on my own at home, doing loads of ideas to do with clothes that were inflatable, and with these huge arms that look like lungs and body parts. And then we just kind of simmered it all down, and I cast the net very wide in the references. So there's lots of the costumes are mainly sort of framed with a sort of late 19th century silhouette, and we really went for the big sleeves of the 1890s, and that was to do with her kind of feeling more creature-like because they're quite strange, and also they're very empowering. And but I was also looking at a lot of early 20th century references. I love Elsa Schiaparelli, so I was very influenced by her work, the 1930s surrealist fashion, and also the fashion of the 60s and 70s, the space age designers like Courrèges and Pierre Cardin. So those shoes that she wears are a kind of hybrid. They're totally inspired by some shoes that André Courrèges did with peaked toes, and then we merged them with a Victorian boot. And there's lots of referencing. There are certain pieces that I could say were kind of totally inspired by a particular thing that I've seen that I've then, grafted some sleeves onto or played with the shape.
So I just wanted to bring the two of you in to complete the picture and maybe talk about the sonic element of the film, Johnnie and Jerskin. Maybe Johnnie, you can start by talking about sound and how it worked for you in this film and your discussions with Yorgos and designing the soundscape.
Yeah, it's a interesting one, the sound, because as my mother said to me once, what do you mean you do the sound on films? They sound all right to me. And I thought, well, there is a bit of work that goes in, so. But really it was about, looking at the extraordinary performances and the sets and just saying, wow, normal sound is going to look out of place with what we're looking at. So it was about finding ways of presenting soundscapes that were subtle but unusual enough to stand up against, with so much other strong stuff happening, basically. So that and getting things like the frog to be sounding correct and to sound worthy, and also making the mix so that Jerskin, your music sounds fantastic. Well done.
Jerskin, can you say a little bit about... Is this your first film score?
Yes.
Okay.
Not bad.
What were the two of you talking about in terms of the idea for the music, Yorgos and Jerskin?
Not much. We didn't do any references. I think Yorgos specifically said that he didn't want any references and for me to listen to anything else at all.
Ever. Again.
He's and I guess like the central idea of a brief like that is try and come up with something that hasn't been come up with before. And if you're a young and kind of egotistical artist, you think that's a really exciting idea. And then you try and do it, and you realize, oh fuck, that's completely impossible. And so I tried my best, and it came out all right. So it was fine.
I'm gonna swear again. Let me know, and I'll bleep.
Oh yeah, no, they're in charge of that. Yeah. I think one thing that was I thought about. One of the first things I considered was wind instruments. I really like wind instruments, and I think they're a bit underused in film music. But also, the idea of breath in instruments, I think, is super interesting. And obviously, a lot of the film's ideas are about what you do with bodies and how you animate those, and ideas of creation or divinity or general animation. And with wind instruments, you kind of have two categories. One is wind that comes from a person, like a flute or a trumpet, and another category is wind that kind of comes artificially. So like you create a machine that breathes on your behalf, like a pipe organ or a bagpipe. And a weird thing you have in common with like human wind instruments, like a trumpet or a flute, is they can bend very easily. And you're very used to hearing people's voices bend when they speak, because when you're saying sentences like I am, it's basically lots of individual note pitches, but they kind of go up and down. So it's very, if you hear a trombone or a saxophone and it bends a bit, that's quite normal. But you'd never really hear it with wind instruments, which are have artificial breath. They're very straight, like a pipe organ. It's all straight notes. You don't bend it. And I think I started trying to play with what would happen if you started to bend artificial wind, and it's quite unnerving. And I think in the scarier parts of the score, a lot of it's down to this. And I think weirdly there's a commonality between that and. It's like when you see a dead body used as a puppet or something, it's like this weird animation of something that shouldn't be alive, but it's acting in a human way. And so that kind of plays in a bit to the fact that, the main character is arguably, in some ways a zombie, and there's that real oddness that occasionally pops up a bit. Thank you.
All right, we don't have much time, so I'm going to just ask a last question. It's been amazing to have all of you here. I think the film is such a showcase of craft, so to hear you all talk about it has been amazing. But I do want to end by having you, Yorgos, maybe speak about somebody who isn't here, who's a very big part of the film. Incredible cast, but Emma Stone, really... Also a producer of the film.
Yes. Well, it has been, unfortunately, my task to speak for her. Hopefully, soon enough, she'll be able to join us. She's obviously devastated that she can't be with us all. She's been, on this very early on since we started writing the script with Tony, because it happened during The Favorite. When we were working together, I mentioned it to her, and she completely got on board immediately. She just naturally became a producer as well, because she just wanted to know everything about everything, not just the script, but like the world and who else we were going to be working with, the other actors. So it's unfortunate that she cannot enjoy, these experiences of sharing the film with all of you. But I think she, as I've said before, because for me the most important thing and what drew me to the novel and to make the film was the character, and she did it. She is the film, and I think she did an incredible work that I could not ever tell her how to do. So we all owe it all to her. And of course, all the other actors. We had a wonderful time during rehearsals with everybody, and as we usually do, we just, played a lot of games basically, and just got comfortable with each other. And
what kind of games?
Just theater games.
What are theater games?
What are theater games? Okay, everybody stand up. No, I'm just kidding. It's just like a lot of physical activities. Like, I remember, for example, I had them rolling around on the ground, and every now and then I would say someone's name, and they had to get up and go over the other people that were rolling around. And during that time, they would kind of do their dialogue. And then the next day, Rami came to me with a note from his doctor and said that rolling around makes him too sick, so he can't do it today. So things like that.
Well, it especially pains us that Emma isn't here, because she's also in 2 other films at the festival. One of them directed by you,
yes,
which we will show in a few days, a short film called Bleat, which we'll be showing with live accompaniment. It's standby only, but you can try to get tickets. And please come. It's going to be a very special evening, so I'm glad we're showing that as well. And I want to thank all of you for this extraordinary film and for being with us.